Electric cars. Are they the future of individual transportation? The answer depends on who you're talking to. Electric car enthusiasts will say, oh yeah. However, energy transition specialist Markam Hislop says maybe, maybe not. He says that because electric vehicles make up just 2% or less of all automobiles in North America and less than 1% globally. And so you got to ask yourself, the electric car was introduced more than 30 years ago. Why are sales so slow? Well, the answers are many, and they include range anxiety, the cost, a limited number of recharging stations, repair facilities, and uncertainty over resale value. Now, on the plus side, concern over greenhouse gases, the cost of gasoline, and technological advances are boosting interest in electric cars. Now, as we move forward, infrastructure and subsidy purchase programs will be key factors in attracting more owners of electric cars. We invited the president of the Vancouver Electric Vehicle Association, Bruce Sharpe, to join us for a conversation that matters about the future of the electric vehicle.
Conversations That Matter is a partner program for the Centre for Dialogue at Simon Fraser University. The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Did you get here in an electric vehicle?
I did. I drove my Tesla Model S here.
What is it about electric vehicles that has people enamored, but also cautious? Because, you know, there's a number of people that I talk to go, oh, I'm thinking of getting an electric vehicle. Maybe not. And then they shy away from it.
Mm-hmm. So the attraction of them is that they're clean vehicles, especially here in BC, where our source of electricity is mostly hydroelectric, renewable energy. And so you're not putting nasty things into the air when you're driving the car. That's kind of where it starts, but once you have the chance to actually drive one, you realize, in fact, they're fantastic cars. They're fun to drive, they're very responsive, they accelerate like crazy, and they're, you know, quiet, clean, smooth ride. It's like being in a jet airplane sometimes, except way quieter. Why doesn't everyone have one then? There's a couple of things that make people hold back. The initial price of the car is higher than a comparable gas car, although sometimes it's hard to find what one is comparable, but generally you've got a wider range of prices for gas cars. And you do save a lot of money when in operational costs of an electric car. You're not buying gas, obviously, or oil and all those things. The maintenance costs are very low because the cars have very few moving parts, and relative to the thousands of parts you have in these very complicated gas engine cars, you just got an electric motor and some wheels, and that's about it. But even with those monthly savings, it more or less balances the initial higher price, but only if you get some sort of rebate from the government to help you along with that initial price.
Only if you get some sort of rebate.
If you factor that in, then you're going to be good, and you'll come out a little bit ahead if you keep the car long enough. Depends on a lot of factors, how much you drive each year, all that kind of thing. But those rebates are really important.
Do we have a rebate program in British Columbia?
We do.
And how does it work?
So it works, there's a couple of components to it. The main one is right at the dealer. If you buy an electric vehicle, you'll get either $5,000 off, $2,500, depends exactly on the vehicle and what capabilities it has, electric capabilities. But it just basically comes off the top of the price of the car, and the dealer manages all that.
So who pays for that rebate?
So that comes out of general revenue from the government. So
from the province of British Columbia?
From the province of British Columbia, yeah. It's strictly a provincial program. There's another program which is called the Scrap It program. So if you're buying an electric vehicle, but you're taking off the road an old gas guzzler, you can get money for that, up to $6,000 for that.
So that would be, in some cases, more than the value of the vehicle.
It definitely could be, yeah. Some of these, the older and crummier the vehicle is, you still get that money, but you wouldn't get much for it on the used market.
So you can get the rebate, plus up to $6,000 for the Scrap It program.
That's right.
So that helps to bring down the cost.
That helps a lot, yeah. No, when you factor that in, and then your monthly savings, that brings the price rate down into a range that's much more affordable for people. What
is the lifespan of an electric car?
Seems like it's going to be a long time. You know, what people worry about with electric cars, when back to what the concerns are, is the battery. We're used to our phones, our laptops, the batteries are not so great after 2 years or less. Sometimes we're not happy about that. That's not the case for electric cars. They do use similar kinds of batteries, but they manage the batteries very carefully. They keep the temperature constant, and the way that you charge them up is there's a lot of smarts that happen around that to make sure that it extends the battery life. So those batteries are looking to last for, well, most of them come with a warranty of like 8 years, but in experiments that people are done and they're tracking how they're working so far, it looks like they're going to last 10, 15 years easily, if not more, and retain most of their ability.
I've got to get you to hang on for a second while we take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Sorry for the interruption, but I need your help. I'm asking you to support the show by becoming a patron. That means pledging $1 per show. Conversations is a unique program. There's no grandstanding, no arguing, no yelling. Instead, I sit down with people who have unique insights, specialized knowledge, and experiences that inform and enlighten. And we do this on an incredibly limited budget with a very small crew. Well, this is my office, and it's where I edit the show. And then once it's ready, we give it away. You know, so many different websites around the world are carrying this show, but they get it for free. They don't pay us. So I'm asking you to pledge $1 per show by going to patreon.com/conversations that matter. Thanks. We want to keep producing conversations, and with your help, we can. Now let's get back to the show. That brings up a question. You know, I want to go buy a used whatever it is. It's a gas-powered vehicle. I know what to check for, or I know somebody who knows what to check for. What's the aftermarket like, or second-hand market like, for electric or hybrid vehicles?
Well, if you're a buyer, it's terrific. There's a lot of options of vehicles to buy, and the prices are really good. The good news is you can get a very affordable electric car on the used market. Some of it has to do with the fact that the cars have been out there long enough now that they were leased, and they're coming off leases now, especially in the US, and there's dealers around who kind of specialized in bringing up those leased vehicles into Canada, fixing them up for Canadian regulations, and making them available.
So you pointed out something a little bit earlier. Here in British Columbia, we're using hydroelectric power, which has a much lower carbon footprint than coal-generated or cogeneration or a variety of other ways of generating power. Mm-hmm. What's that equation when you move into, let's say, eastern United States, where coal power generation is the primary source of, generating electricity? Does that not then negate the benefits of an electric vehicle from a carbon footprint perspective?
Sure. Reduces a little bit, but it doesn't negate it. And even in those states where the source of electricity is pretty nasty, driving an electric vehicle is still comparable to driving an extremely efficient gas engine vehicle. These are complicated calculations, and you want to do this sort of cradle-to-grave calculation, including the manufacturer of the car, manufacturer of the batteries, all these things, and really go end-to-end on that. But people have done that study carefully, and even in the worst places, there's still an advantage to electric cars, and on average, they're much, much better.
Mm-hmm. There are critics of the electric car business. When I was doing some research for this, I was like, holy smokes. People really come up with all sorts of reasons why going electric maybe isn't as environmentally benign as you think it is.
Yes.
And one of them being the batteries. Mm-hmm. The products that are used in them, lithium ion, cobalt, where they come from, the transportation costs of getting there, and so on, and then the life and what happens afterwards.
For sure.
How do you answer that when somebody goes, but,
yeah. No, there's quite a meme out there. Electric cars aren't as green as you think they are. So I'm here to tell you, yeah, they are as green as you think they are, maybe more green than you think they are. Let's face it, there's some powerful economic forces that are kind of invested in electric cars not being the way of the future and sticking to what we've got now. But there's some arguments there that we need to address as well. The batteries, they sound like, batteries, aren't they toxic? And no, they're fine. Lithium-ion batteries are in fact rated as landfill safe. So if you do just have to dispose of them, they're not going to create a lot of toxic waste.
So to that point, if you don't mind me jumping in.
Yeah, sure.
the natural product, the lithium, is not an ever abundant or or continuously renewable supply, are we not better off being able to say, can we reharvest that from the batteries and put it back into use again, or is it a one-time use?
No, absolutely, reuse is important. And I started with the disposal. That's just the worst case, and you don't normally dispose of them. You either recycle the battery materials, or you repurpose the use of the battery. So instead of having it drive a car, use it for stationary storage. So if you've got solar panels in your house, for example, and you want to store the electricity coming out of that into a battery, you can use old electric vehicle batteries for that.
And then it would have a much longer life.
They'll last basically forever, in that situation.
Do you think that electric vehicles are the vehicle or transportation model that we ultimately are transitioning to, or is it another step to what will become the replacement of the automobile?
I think it's a component of what will become a replacement for the automobile, and I think it's a really important component. Certainly when you get into this world of electric vehicles and own one and drive one, it feels so natural. You wonder how anybody put up with these gas vehicles for so long. When I say it's a component, the other component that's coming along, of course, autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars. Who knows exactly what the time frame for that is, but there's...
If it will actually happen.
Or if it will actually happen. I think it's some version of it will actually happen, and there's a wide range of possible futures there. But they are generally connected to electric cars as well. You notice whenever you hear about these autonomous vehicles, almost all the time they're using an electric car, and that's the way of the future for sure.
Tesla looks like it's the closest to delivering on that promise at this point.
Tesla is definitely doing tons of work. Most car companies are doing a lot on that. The Waymo, which is a spin-off from Google, are right now driving fully or having fully autonomous vehicles available in places like Phoenix and so on. You can just
in urban environments.
In urban environments, yes. Yeah, there's...
Because there is an urban-rural component to autonomous vehicles.
Well, there is. It's a question of what places do you have well mapped out, and just how much training has the car had for that specific area.
Right.
So in some ways, rural is easier. Fewer roads, less pedestrians, less complicated things going on there. But right now, you can have fully self-driving cars, but in restricted areas where they kind of know what to do and they know the landscape of that territory.
What do you say to the argument that, well, an electric car is just another version of individual transportation, which takes up an awful lot of space, and space becomes a challenge as we have growing density in urban environments? Is the electric car going to get reduced down to electric seat or scooter or something because the space becomes a requirement? Are we still locked in the idea of this is my personal vehicle and I'm going to drive around and take up all this space?
So electric cars by themselves don't solve congestion problems. Our point of view is that people are probably going to buy personal vehicles for quite some time before a replacement comes along. And if they're going to do that, it's better that they drive electric than not. The congestion problem and just the number of cars and so on, that's more on the side of the autonomous vehicles. If that really comes to pass and it works well, then all of a sudden the need for a personal vehicle becomes much less.
And so then that makes it far more practical.
That makes it more practical to have fewer cars and to not have your own car, for sure. And I bring it up in the context of electric cars because you can be sure that all those autonomous vehicles will be electric.
And in an urban environment where there's congestion, I go, bring it on.
Yeah.
Because I'd rather be doing something else than sitting behind the wheel getting frustrated by the driver that's in front of me.
Definitely. And breathing their fumes.
But out when I'm driving into the interior, I actually want to drive. I like driving in that kind of... so I think that we're going to have a mix. And we always have a mix of different types of transportation on the road. And I think that that's probably not going to go away for a long time to come. But that transition is happening. But it's happening slowly. What's the percentage of people who own electric vehicles in North America? Or the car population, not people,
Yeah.
but what's the percentage of the car population?
It's certainly pretty small right now, and in terms of new vehicles being sold, we're in somewhere between the 1% and 2% of new vehicles are electric.
And there's about 4.5 million new cars that are brought onto the road each year in North America.
Sounds about right, yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're talking very small numbers.
Yeah, we're talking in the hundreds of thousands, like total, and not around the world. I think there's a couple of million electric cars, maybe, but that's a small percentage right now.
If we want to make that transition, there are infrastructure issues that have to be put into place to be able to accommodate that. I was driving through Northern California back in December and stopped to get gas for my gas-powered vehicle, and there was a Tesla refueling station. 8 cars all plugged in, another 8 or 12 waiting. I had fueled up, got something to eat, dealt with a few other things, and the vehicles that were there at the plug-in station when I arrived were still there when I was leaving. This becomes a bit of an issue. So how do we start to build out that? Because without it, I don't see the population of electric vehicles really surging forward. But without the surge, then you don't get the infrastructure. It's a chicken and egg kind of thing.
It is a chicken and egg, and this is why we keep looking to government for leadership in this to help make it happen. And they definitely have an important role to play there on the infrastructure. It's important when you think about electric vehicles to realize there's kind of 2 types of driving that you do. There's your daily use driving, your commute to work, picking up the groceries, that sort of thing. And then there's these road trips that you might do less often. For daily use driving, the ideal thing is to just charge at home. And this
Plug it in overnight the way you do
plug it in
any other
overnight,
device.
like
yes.
you plug in your phone, and and it's great. And the biggest pleasant surprise for me about an electric vehicle, which I hadn't thought about until I got one, was every morning I wake up and I've got a full tank. This is nice. And we still have a gas car that we use occasionally, and if I get in that and the needle's getting a little bit low, I start to have range anxiety in my gas car. Oh, what do I do now? How come it's not full in the morning? So
you actually have range anxiety with your gas-powered vehicle, not your electric one.
Exactly, yeah. Now for road trips, it is a different situation. So you're not at home, so you can't be charging at home. The situation you mentioned with Tesla is one I've experienced myself, although in a more positive way generally than what you described. In California in particular, they're very heavily used, the Tesla superchargers as they're called. But we've done several trips to California and Las Vegas and other places, actually all across the US and Canada with our car. And generally, there's a charger available, and the charging is quite quick. So a typical driving scenario for us to go from here down to Northern California is you drive for a couple hours, you want to break anyway, you stop for your cup of coffee, and by the time you've done everything and you got your coffee in hand, the car's pretty much ready to go. The car's generally ready to go before we are. So that's fine. The congestion at the chargers that you mentioned is going to happen more and more as more of these vehicles come on the road. And right now here in the Lower Mainland, we've got quite a number, hundreds of public chargers that are available for people. That works well. If you want to make a road trip to the interior of BC and so on, we're getting there. We've got close to 60 what are called DC fast chargers, so they can give you like an 80% charge in maybe 20 minutes or so that's not bad. And then there's many, many more of less powerful chargers that take longer to charge, but maybe you're going to stay somewhere for a while. They're a good option for you as well.
One of the other infrastructure things that we have to take into consideration is if you have all these electric vehicle owners coming home between 5 and 7 o'clock at night and plugging in their car, in addition to turning on the lights and the TV and everything else, the stress on the system to deliver that electricity goes way up. Is there going to be a need to tell the charging station for your car, don't turn on until 10:30 tonight when the overall load on the grid goes down?
There's probably going to be some management like that. BC Hydro is doing some experimentation right now where they, and it's just one model, but where they have a little bit of control as to when your car starts charging, so they can manage that across a neighborhood or maybe a larger area. In other jurisdictions, they have differential pricing for electricity. So they encourage you to use electricity at night instead of at the peak time of 5 p.m. And so you save a lot of money. That obviously incentivizes people to shift their charging. And these cars, you can plug it in, but say don't start charging until midnight or whatever. And so it just takes care of itself. That's what I do. So electric utilities are actually quite enthusiastic about electric cars, as opposed to being concerned about this huge load on the grid. They're enthusiastic because the nature of charging a car is especially at home, you park the car, you plug it in, you've got a long window of charging time that's available, but you only need a fairly short charging time within that window. So this gives utilities all sorts of opportunities to kind of balance the load on the grid, and they have to worry about peak charging times and what do they do with excess electricity at night, in fact. Do they sell it on some market where they don't really get any money for it? They'd be very happy to put it into electric cars.
Why did you start the Vancouver Electric Vehicle Association? Doesn't BCAA cover everything?
BCA has some helpful things going on, but and I didn't start the association. It's been around since 1988, if you can imagine. This is
1988?
This is our 30th year. So 30 years ago, some very visionary people realized that electric transportation was really the way of the future, and they wanted to do their bit to promote it. In those days, of course, the only way you can get an electric car is to build one yourself or take an existing car and convert it to electric. So there was a lot of people who would do that, and it was a mutual support group for that. But it was also one where a group that would educate the public on the possibilities of electric transportation. And that's always been an important component of the group. When I bought my electric car, this is almost 5 years ago now, I really didn't know anything about electric cars. I wanted a clean car. Tesla was getting all these great reviews, and I looked into it. Honestly, I came for the technology as much as for the environment, but I stayed for the environment. I joke that to people that the hazard of owning an electric car is once you get one, you can't shut up about it, and you become the most boring person at all parties.
Well, it's like the person who talks about their diet all the time, and the person who talks about their electric car.
Pretty much.
I've noticed that you see people driving electric cars, and it's written all over the car, "I'm electric."
We're not shy. So I thought, so I became one of those people, and I thought I might as well channel my enthusiasm into an organization that's actually designed to meet the public and raise awareness about these cars.
And so I'm sure as people are moving more and more towards electric cars, they've got hundreds of questions, don't know where to turn to, and you can be there as a valuable resource.
We are, and we get lots of questions. You know, just on our website, we have a contact form, ask us anything. We get a steady stream of questions coming in there, and the amount of expertise that's in our group to answer this question is amazing. Lots of questions come in, and I have no idea almost even what the question means. I just pass it on to the group, and somebody just knows all about that specific topic in there. So we're happy to do that. We attend lots of events ourselves, public events. We'll show up with the cars, and we're happy to talk to the public then. And then we run our own event every year called Electrofest, which is where we bring together a whole bunch of cars for test drives. We have displays for people. We have presentations on everything to do with electric cars and to educate people about those.
It will be very interesting to see what this transformation looks like, how fast it happens, and what it will mean for us in the future. Thank you very much for coming in and sharing your insights with us.
It was great to talk to you.